Rumorology 101, How Mormon Scholars Fabricate Mormon History. Since investigating my own family history, I have discovered Mormon historians appear to be fabricating out of whole cloth their own fanciful version of history. It emerges that those claiming to be scholars, and certainly only those supported by the well-funded institutions such as Harvard, Yale, and Stanford, are writing and maintaining a Mormon history based solely on inadmissible hearsay evidence of what I would characterize as neighborhood gossip, innuendo, and rumor from less than reputable sources. If an actual admissible direct or documentary evidence emerges, it appears to be quickly buried, ignored, or interpreted by these scholars in such a contorted way, that it loses all meaning. I have yet to read anything purporting to be evidence to support the notion Smith practiced polygamy that would pass the smell test to be admissible in court. In fact, Brian Hales has spent 3 volumes and more in repeating, rearranging, and redecorating the same old rumors and innuendos circulating at the time of Smith's death, claiming it is evidence, which it is not. What he claims to be evidence is in fact unreliable testimony from those engaged in polygamy at the time and had every incentive to lie. In fact, John D. Lee reports Brigham Young instructed Mormon insiders to lie in what Young called Gentile courts, since no Gentile can stand in judgment of a Mormon. While doing this, the Hales as well as anti-Mormon scholars such as Dan Vogel, have buried actual evidence of Smith fighting harem polygamy at every juncture. However many times can an innocent man, as Smith, claim he is innocent, present well-documented admissible evidence of his innocence, and these purported scholars maintain the opposite lie. In doing so, Hales and all other historians have buried the real evidence admissible in court, which are court transcripts, business records, and minutes of business meetings and documents produced as a result of these official business. Lately these alleged scholars are so bold, they simply eliminated the need for any evidence at all. Example: the most recent journey into fanciful Mormon history, Secret Combinations, Early Mormon Counterfeit, claiming the entire Smith family engaged in counterfeiting in Vermont. The author spends an entire book on this premise while never introducing any reasonable of evidence in support of her theory. Her evidence can be summed up as this. There was a famous counterfeiter who resided for a while in Vermont. The Smith family also resided a time in Vermont. Therefore, Smiths were counterfeiters. Want another gem from this counterfeiting book? The Smith were known to have helped a farmer dig out a cave on his land. A few famous counterfeiters were known to use caves occasionally for counterfeiting. Therefore, Smiths were counterfeiters and using this cave to counterfeit. This is not a joke. This is passing for real scholarship and then used by others to perpetuate the lies of history which convulse out of decrepit institutions such as Harvard, Yale, and Stanford. The only direct evidence the author presents is that Smith Sr. passed a counterfeit bill through his store. If this makes Smith a counterfeiter, then I myself could be accused of a crime. While in San Francisco, I was passed a counterfeit 10 from a taxi driver, which was rejected by an electronics store. I put it aside pocket of my purse, wanting to keep it as a souvenir, only to discover when I was home looking for it, I thoughtlessly pulled it out and paid a food vendor at a convention. I laughed and felt a twinge of regret that I passed it to an unsuspecting fast food worker. However, I have not thought of it since until reading the book and realizing this is the only piece of direct evidence the author uses to condemn the Smith family was that Smith Sr. was called as a witness in a trial against counterfeiters because he had accidentally passed a counterfeit bill through his store. An innocent accident happening every day in the U.S. economy. Smith was not prosecuted as a co-conspirator, again admissible evidence of his innocence. But the author goes out of her way, doing gymnastic contortions of logic, to present this as evidence of not Smith's innocence, but the opposite, of his guilt. I as an attorney cannot emphasize how egregiously deceptive this is. But all the Mormon scholars engage in this fraud of logic. The story endorsed by both pro- and anti-Mormon scholars is Smith and his brother Hiram were killed at Carthage because of citizen anger over Smith destroyed the Wilson Law printing press which published the expositor accusing Smith of polygamy. Oh, perish the thought, since Bennett had been publishing the same lies for 2 years which everyone and their cousin had already heard about. It was a widely told talk of religious hedonism that circulated polite society because of many communities engaged in the same sexual licentiousness and calling it a religion, such as the Oneida and the Cochrane communities, including Stony Brook. These were characterized later by historians as social experiments which were unsuccessful. However, while both pro- and anti-Mormon historians argue relentlessly the social impact of destroying a printing press and its symbolic significance to the principle of freedom of the press, none mention that in fact, the press was destroyed because a trial was held, and it was determined through testimony by many witnesses the law printing press was being used for counterfeiting operations. Further, it was concluded that Joseph Jackson, a new resident of Nauvoo, was planning to kidnap Hiram Smith's daughter and kill the entire family if they came after her. Further, William Law had brought a dozen or so drunk Missourians up the river late at night, marched to Joseph's home and threatened him in order to trigger a violent confrontation, ending in Smith's death. Wilson Law admitted the incident in a letter of apology he wrote the next day to calm the situation, but in doing so he admitted the plot to trigger the mob violence against Smith. Smith and the city council had every legal right to destroy the printing press being used for illegal counterfeiting. They also had the right to exile Law, Foster, and Jackson from Nauvoo due to their persistent illegal activity and incitement of violence. These facts are presented very clearly in the Nauvoo City Council minutes June 8 and June 10, 1842, but not one of the prominent historians, including Vogel, an anti-Mormon historian, or Brian Hales, who uses the laws, dissolute counterfeiters, and murder conspirators, as a reliable source for Smith's polygamy. Scholars on both sides of the Mormon debate consistently ignore, bury, and in the case of Hales, intentionally misrepresent the evidence by using as reliable sources people such as the Laws, so clearly engaged in criminal activity and assassination attempts against the Smith, all before Carthage. The council minutes disclose that the Laws were anything but reliable, but can be characterized as Mississippi rats, scalawags and scoundrels who were counterfeiting money, enticing other men in Nauvoo to invest in their operation, leading drunken mobs from Missouri and Nauvoo to threaten violence against Smith, offering a witness $50 to kill Smith and openly threatening to kill the entire Hiram Smith family. Further documented in these council minutes, admissible in court with proper foundation, is illegal gambling and unlicensed liquor consumption which resulted in lynching a Negro. This is so explosive it boggles the mind. And these scholars have buried all this pertinent facts that would exonerate Smith and his reputation leading up to his death. This pattern and practice engaged by both sides of the Mormon debate is so pervasive as to be statistically improbable to occur by chance, but can be concluded is done by design. Statistically speaking, when 100% of the pro- and anti-Mormon scholars ignore or bury pertinent historical fact, and fail to even address facts such as those raised in the council meeting, one can be fairly certain there is an unstated agreement of hands-off. And the fiction that Smith practiced harem-style polygamy is a prime example. There appears to be a understanding, or gentleman's agreement of sorts, that Smith's polygamy will not be debated. The only thing free for debate is Smith's moral character, i.e. Smith is a sexual deviant and charlatan because of polygamy, or Smith is a misunderstood religious genius because of polygamy. But as appears starkly evident, the debate of whether or not Smith actually persistently denounced and decried polygamy is hands-off by both sides. Just bury the entire body of admissible reliable evidence that Smith and the original Mormon movement were against polygamy, and excommunicated all persons caught engaging in the practice or promotion of polygamy, such as William C. Bennett and the Laws. They also have ignored or concealed the book published by Mormon member at the time of the Smoot hearings, presenting declaration after declaration of Mormons stating Smith never practiced or promoted polygamy, and in fact said it should put down at every chance. The actual reality is there is little to no evidence admissible in a court of law to show that Smith ever practiced or promoted harem polygamy. Brian Hales himself admits this in his exhaustive rumor and innuendo-filled treatises on Smith's polygamy. The revelation itself, DC 132, is inadmissible in a because of lack of foundation, or chain of custody, since it was found years later in someone's diary. Further, the story around its production fails because it appears it was not produced as an official document, but done in haste for persuading Emma and then promptly burned. But oh yeah, we forgot, Kingsbury was able to copy it just before the original went up in smoke in the Smith parlor in some form of sigil ritual magical incantation. Ridiculous. Look up sigil magic on YouTube, and you will understand the reference. It's a ritual in which you write down a curse or blessing using only consonants like Babylonian code, and then burn it to seal it up to heaven. Early Mormons seemed to burn documents consistently. For example, in his autobiography, John D. Lee refers to a highly secretive body called the Council of 50 which met in the woods. Lee reports the council meetings were so secretive, no minutes of the meeting were kept, and if there were minutes, they were promptly burned at the end of each meeting. Magical how these burned minutes reconstructed themselves, appearing 100 years later on the Mormon Documents website. Emma also refers to these secret meetings held in the woods in which the plan was concocted to kill Smith. Another reason to burn minutes of the secretive Council of 50, aka Danite KKK vigilantes. It appears there were other instances of reported sigil magic, such as reported years later by one polygamous wife that Smith wanted to write down his marriage proposal only if she burned it immediately after reading it. This is done again, Smith or Emma burning the DC revelation of polygamy only to have it magically reappear and announced into official practice 5 years after Smith's death by that blood atonement preacher himself, Brigham Young. Now that's pretty powerful magic. The above is stated with tongue firmly in cheek, because by today's standards, such reported conduct by Smith and the Quorum of the 12 appears laughable and childish. But no, not to the Mormon scholars. Burning marriage proposals and revelations on celestial sex is serious business. In reading minutes of meeting in which Joseph Smith is reported to have attended, Joseph Smith was practical, decisive, and oriented to reality. He had to be, since thousands of people who sold everything to follow him were depending on him. Now there is a mountain of evidence on the other side of the debate showing Smith did not endorse polygamy, admissible in court. There are business meetings, minutes of Relief Society, official excommunications, and official church documents, all denouncing polygamy and admissible in court. This means, listen careful, this is all the evidence there is that is reliable. 100% shows Smith did not promote or practice polygamy. All of this suppressed, ignored, or concealed by scholars on both pro- and anti-Mormon debate. Further, not one historian has referred to the book published by Faithful Mormon during the Smoot hearings providing witness testimony equal and more compelling, all testifying Smith never practiced polygamy, and in fact, his last instruction to the presiding Nauvoo bishop that polygamy should be put down at every chance. 3 weeks later Smith was assassinated, and the rest is confined to the paid liars posing as historians. Rather than search for truth, the Hales and other scholars reach such improbable heights of credulity by arguing the official document produced by Smith and the Relief Society officially denouncing polygamy to Nauvoo citizens actually means the opposite. Hale claims Smith is just fooling, making a public display of being against polygamy, while crossing his fingers behind his back. Smith only condemns a very specialized form of spiritual wifery while still but secretly endorsing harem polygamy. Hales chokes on a gnat by this bit of acrobatic irrationality and would most certainly be laughed out FO court. But I think Hales gives up his and other scholars' secrets, just use precisely coded language to conceal the big lie while pretending to promote the truth. Just watch me adjust my glasses, or Swifty touch my eye when I'm telling a big fat lie. Hales wants you to believe, as all the scholars, that 100% of Smith's official denouncements of polygamy was fraudulent, and they, the scholars being paid to be scholarly, are telling you the truth. Do they realize that Smith was so loved by the people that he drew thousands of adherents to his cause, which is so evident? The chaotic years leading up to the Civil War, in which free blacks and Native Americans were being captured by paid vigilantes and sold into slavery in the South, these interracial blacks and Native Americans found hope and promise in Smith's message, where white and blacks can settle somewhere and live free from the violence of the paid mobs of ruthless murderers and paid assassins. This twisted logic of these paid hacks posing as scholars is so diluted as to be embarrassing. But this is what these scholars have been engaging in for decades under cover of their scholarly treatises, with a hearty hail and slap on the back. They are concealing a true organic movement began by Smith to provide a peaceful place to settle with the United States for these disenfranchised people, and reducing it to the comical, burlesques of a debate on harem polygamy and sex. These scholars demean human dignity by reducing Smith's significance down to a sex cult. Yes, Mormonism is identified as a sex cult because of its promotion of celestial sex as a reward for nutritiousness. Celestial sex was all I heard at BYU when I attended religion class. The most popular Professor Hiram Andrus lecture hall was crowded to overfill with pimpled pasty-faced 19-year-old virgins, drinking up his lectures of celestial sex, with unicorns and ice sculptures to boot. This nothing new when using religion as a military force. Just like Islam promises its adherents today, and before that Sufi assassins promised virgins and eternal sex, and it goes on and on. What is sad about Mormon scholars, is the appearance as grouped to asexual, so the tenacity to promotion of harem polygamy is a bit odd, unless, as I suspect, there is a higher order where men will have eternal sex with men. With all the secrets within secrets, I'm sure there is a sexual fetish category for everyone as long as you make me money here on earth. There, I believe it is wise as Descartes and doubt everything you've been told, and start on a journey of discovery of actual reality. I do not use the word truth since that is a code word for lie in the elite circles. The saying is as follows: I am giving you the truth. Now we know there is reality and there is truth, and it is truth not reality you must believe. I've spent a lifetime studying these wizards of lies and have entire encyclopedia of their code words and rituals. I've seen family, colegas, and friend die as result. This is why reality needs to be taught and embraced, and these people of the lie must be finally stopped. I discovered such abysmal research posing as scholarship. I am proposing a Citizens' Council of Evidence Review. I proposed that all retired lawyers volunteer to write critiques using rules of evidence of research posing as scholarship.